Peter. Let's see if this works. And G-Pin's going to swear at me. Because... got a second one. So the question is, does it work and can we get into it? It started to boot. This, Peter, is an Extron IN 1606. The same sort of presentation switcher I have under the desk here for basically dealing with the Archimedes. So basically, got two analog inputs, four HDMIs. It outputs two HDMIs. So the way I have my desk set up, I have two analog feeds with audio going down under the desk, plus a HDMI feed. It then scales it to my HDMI capture card, and the second output goes to a second monitor. Hi Swarm. For live view of whatever's coming into it. The reason I've bought a second is because of a friend of mine's work. He's got a social club that he deals with, and they have IGPin, and they have an interesting setup in the DJ booth. There are two computers in the DJ booth. One is provided by a company for social club gaming, and the other does their adverts. And what's meant to happen is, let's say you go on a bingo night, you go to the custom machine, you tell it you want bingo, it generates onto its second output the bingo calling screen. So on your screen, you get all the grid of all the numbers, and you can set it up and you can call it. The second screen has a big layout that just basically tells you the current number that's just been called. The output from this goes into a TV distribution matrix system, so it comes up on all the screens around the room. The problem is, the game machine runs Windows 7, and your preview monitor is on one video output, and the output to the big screens comes out basically over DVI. And what they want to do is to put an HDMI switch between the two machines and the system that runs the TVs. The problem is, every time you switch it, the custom machine loses connectivity to that second monitor, resets its video outputs, and hangs the entire system. It's the entire system on that machine. So the idea is, by picking up a Extron like mine, and we've tested this because we took mine out there the other day, because the PC is consistently talking to the Extron, and the Extron samples, rescales, and does its own output, no matter which input you've got selected, it never disconnects from the source. So the calling machine never knows that it's not displaying on the monitor. As far as it's concerned, it's talking to the monitor, it's just the monitor's the Extron. And the reason we've gone for this, because this is going to be overkill for the job, is price. The 1606, as I said, is a 16 input system, but its max output is full HD, so 1920 by 1080. So there's a lot of places that have been stripping these out and replacing them with the 4 and the 8K models. This means that although you can go and buy one of these from Extron and pay a serious amount of money, they're floating around eBay for pennies on the pound. Oh, my X270. Hi, Howard. But yeah, this one, for example, I think if you want one new, Extron will still relieve you of about £3,000. My one was £10 plus shipping, £17 in total. This one is 24.99 including shipping. And for streaming the 1080, for the reason we want this one, Swarm, 1080, that's all the system produces. So anything over 1080's overkill anyway. So this will replace a basic HDMI switch, do a much better job, and even better, the controls are illuminated. So while it's under the desk, you can see it even if the DJ booth is dark. So if we grab an input, we should let's go for that one. Right, we've got input 5 and we've got input 5. That's good. I should have brought another HDMI cable up so I could have linked it down into the Extron. But the question is, has this picked up? Right, I don't think this is pulling up an IP off the network, so we'll have to look at that in a second. The reason why I said the other day why GPIN is going to swear at me is because I have now bought 2 of these and both of them work. How many are you up to, GPIN? 4. So, yeah, like I said, I had a feeling GPIN was going to swear at me if this one worked as well. Right, I think I should grab a second HDMI cable and we'll plug this in to the other Extron and see what video output it's producing and if we can get into the menus. So I'll be back in a sec. And for those of you wondering, yes, it's being bloody hot and humid again here in the UK. So I am taking the coward's way out. And you might be able to see on my main cam the black line on the back wall, which is because the computer room aircon is running full pelt. Although, because of the weather, full pelt also means that I'm generating almost 4 kilowatts off the roof. Actually, no, we want that in that one. So the aircon is basically running for free. Right, so what we need now is some power. That should power up my Extron. We switch over to here. So this should our output fix. There we go. So that's the very modified output from my machine going through this Extron, into that Extron, up to this monitor and over to my capture card. Oh yeah. This unit swarm is, when I put it in, it was expensive. This is what's termed in the UK a medical grade aircon, which means basically even if it needs to defrost, it can do defrosting while still running. You can tell it to cool and it just will not stop regardless of conditions. So it will start pouring water out into the guttering outside, and while it's on, it just won't stop cooling. Yes, it's the actual design of this isn't a hermetically sealed one, but it's based on the same system. But the idea is, if you have a patient in ICU, you don't want the aircon to stop for 10 minutes because it needs to defrost the chiller, or more to the point, the heat exchanger compressor unit. So it's designed with its own heaters. So it's not, if it goes into that mode, it's not as efficient as a standard aircon because it has to run the heating elements on top of the compressor. But it means you don't have to stop, which, let's face it, in a computer room where it's not so bad now because of changing hardware, but when I put the aircon in, the computer room consumed 4 kilowatts constantly, and over 50% of that came out as heat. So the aircon for what we're running now is massively overspec'd, which means if you come in, close the door, close the window and hit the button, it gets quite cold in here. Aha! We have a menu. Ah, that would be why. We had a site once where the computers went through the wall, and I wish I was joking. It was the subsidiary quarry of what was one of my big customers at the time. And the subsidiary quarry, which was about 35 miles away, their buildings were prefab office buildings, and they went in one day and someone had cut a hole in the office wall exactly the size of a mini tower PC case, cut the cables and pulled the computer backwards through the wall. Hmm. That is enter. So it won't let me go on to... Right. Right. So... Let's see if we can get into this on the network. Well, we can see it. Let's see if we've got a... Ah. Let's throw this back onto the main network. Right, now let's see if we can get into the thing. Got DHCP now. Well, it still says DHCP mode off there. Right, let's I have the manual almost permanently up in the second screen. This one didn't come with any of the connectors for the back, but that isn't a problem for this one. Right. Let's try a different browser. Let's kill the input to it. Reboot. Try again. How did it manage to screw that up? A1. Well, that looks good. No, it corrupted them. It was trying to use 191.168.100 instead of 192.168.100. So, but it hadn't locked the DHCP mode in, so it turned from on to off again. So let's fix that properly. So gonna throw that straight as a full. There we go, communication settings. Yep, that looks better. I'm not going to bother naming the inputs. Now that should mean if I try and log in again, yeah, so this one now has blank password. I've got the serial number, which is the default password on these on my phone because I took a picture of that in advance. So we should be able to change with it going, oh, there's no input on that. If I that looks pretty. If I find another one, GPIN, do you want me to ship it to Canada? So if I get this one. So I'll show you the back of this because once I've put all the connections back into my Extron. I need to remake the clip on that network. So basically, let's see if I've got this in shot. There we go. So your basic controls are volume on this side if you're using the audio side. Menu selectors. Then what you've got here are your 2 analog inputs, 4 HDMI, and also telling you if it's using HDCP on the 4 HDMIs. You've got 2 outputs. Again, do you have the copy protection on it? And then you've got your selection inputs. You can also configure it via serial over USB using this one. Mini B on the front. And then on the back you've got LAN and serial, the 2 outputs for the audio, 2 mic inputs, 6 audio inputs which are semi-fixed. Some are fixed to certain inputs and others you can select where you want them to. You've got your 2 HDMI outs and then you've got all the inputs on the other end. So power, 2 analog and the 4 HDMI. And to give you an idea, when they say configurable analog, depending on the cable you make up, depends on what you feed in there. So if you were to plug a standard SVGA cable into there, it will run in SVGA mode. If you plug the Archimedes in there, it will handle both the analog and the digital TTL level RGB. It can also do component and composite, depending on the wiring. Mine has the full set of connectors on this side. This one doesn't, but as we only want the HDMI I don't care that it's missing the Phoenix connectors for the audio. This one's actually in really good nick. It's actually slightly better nick than mine, but I'm not changing it over. So this is going to go out for about £100 plus my time, and it will solve a problem for Simon, but it will also mostly solve a problem for his customer, who's going to have 4 60-odd inch TVs that this is going to be driving. So it'll be 2 inputs, 1 output, and off it goes. But yeah, the problem is the internal flash. It's not so much it's bad. There's 2 things that can happen to them, what I can understand. The first is the flash can die. It's, as far as I can tell, it's not the world's greatest flash chip. The second one is it can be corrupted, and yes, that can be resurrected by dumping the correct stuff onto it directly. I think you need a sort of interposer board, and then you can do it on the machine. Otherwise, you've got to remove the surface mount flash chip and have an adapter and a programmer, etc. But as far as I can tell, the reason for them failing, not corrupting, but the actual failure, depends on how often they were reconfigured. As far as I can tell, the flash chip used does not have a huge amount of write cycles, and it's really easy doing multiple changes to literally wear the flash out, at which point you're screwed until you replace the flash chip. You can't get the firmware for these directly. You have to have an agreement stroke contract stroke account with Extron to get it. So mine is not on the latest firmware simply because I don't have a copy of it. I could get a copy of it because I think Majenko's got it. So it might be a case of stealing it off Majenko to push onto that one. But for the sort of switching we're doing with these, we don't need it. They literally, I want it sat there to just go, I want this analog input, that analog input, or that digital input. And then everything else is handled by a really cheap USB HDMI capture module, because this is doing all the work. Hence why the capturing from the Archimedes suddenly went from, if you change something it crashes OBS, to you can do what you want and nothing happens, because what the Extron in my case is doing is the inverse of what we want at this social club. At the social club, the problem is if the monitor changes, the system hangs. Here, it's if the input changed, it hung. Because of my analog SVGA input, if you disconnected the SVGA input, for some reason the unit would reboot and that would make OBS throw a fit. So again, the Extron's there just to give consistency to the other end, at which point you don't have to worry about it because it's doing all the work. So you can feed it, you can plug in a PC and run Doom and feed it 320 by 240 and it will spit it out at 720 HDMI, including capturing the analog audio and mounting that into the HDMI feed as well. So all you need to capture is HDMI. So much easier. It gets rid of all those problems Shelby's famous for going on about, of the problems of capturing analog video, especially SVGA, but because there's no real, I'm trying to think the best way of putting it, there's standards for timing, but they're so loose. You can be like 3% out, the monitor will be fine, but your capture card throws a fit. The Extron deals with all that, and you get a digital signal out, and you just capture that. End of story. Solves all the problems. So, which is why when I got mine, the one under the desk, I actually got a message from someone while I was bidding on it, going, "Oh, if you're bidding on it, I probably shouldn't." Signed, Baljamet. But yes, we were both bidding on the exact same unit at the time, so. did come with what is quite possibly the mankiest design of I mean, look at the size of that for a C13. I mean, it's got tons of strain relief, and it still managed to. I'm guessing it was under a desk and bent to the side, because there is a definite kink in that cable, as opposed to chat where there's a definite kink in jeeping. So, but yeah, so we can take this out to the club, which under the DJ's desk does have a set of rack mounts. So this can go out, get bolted under the desk. Ah, so I was close, but it's even worse than I thought. Oh, a terrible day. I'm almost out of drink again. Let's see how it's doing in here. Right. So to give you an idea, the AC's been on roughly 40 minutes, and we've come down from 30 to 24 degrees. Yay for cheap Coke. And when I say cheap Coke, the average price for a 500ml in the shops is currently £2.25. I'm paying 90p a bottle for this, which is why I tend to buy 48 litres at a time, and then a courier curses because someone's ordered 48 kilos of Coca-Cola. This is, believe it or not, this is grey import Coca-Cola. Right. Well, that's all working, so thank you everyone for joining me. Like I said, if I find another one on a cheap G-pin, do you want to let... Hi, Majenko. You're few hours late for the morning. I will give you the bad news, by the way, Majenko, that as you are now in my computer room, the aircon's on. The this stuff swarm is labelled in Ukrainian and Moldovan. Well, there are a few tested ones that are a little bit more expensive. This one I got because Giga Technology said it was tested, and so it was twice the price of mine at $24.99. But that was including shipping. So if you look up Giga Technologies on eBay, they seem to have quite a few in different levels of quality. The only issue with this one, which isn't an issue for this one, is it hasn't come with any of the Phoenix connectors. Yeah, my original one, Majenko, was £17 including shipping. The official price was a tenner. The shipping was almost as much as what I paid for it. But yes, maybe we should get one and send it as an emergency care package to Canada. You know, Moon Machine this way, Extron the other. Like as I've said, this is literally going to act as a 2 HDMI input, single output for a social club. So. But yes, it seems to be all working, and I mean, if I needed the audio inputs, I could always take a couple of Phoenix connectors off mine, but I don't think I will. We just don't need it for this. Insert the obvious answer, does Pip consent? Thought I'd get there before, say, G-Pin did. Go to the big shot. There we go. I still haven't got the light quite right. There's still a reflection from the iris. It's not that the connectors aren't readily available. These ones have an extra large tang on them, so that your cabling can. Let me grab one. So there's an extra long section on them. The connector is pretty much a Phoenix connector, but it has an extra long tang for cable tying your cables too. And plus the fact, if you did get one, you would of course want them all to match in colour. Because, you know, traditionally they're green. I'm not going to be able to get that one back in again now. But so they could do the the acorn thing, and you can have a serial port that you can plug in upside down. Think this thing and stick my head under it. Hold on a second. Yeah, no, what it is, Swarm, that this camera has a iris lens shutter. So if you want to put it in privacy mode, you flick a switch and 4 leaves of the iris close over the lens, but they're red, and it's got a doesn't always retract properly, and if there's enough light, it leaves red fringing about here and down here, and it annoys me because it means there's weird coloration on the screen, but there shouldn't be. But there's not a raccoon hiding under the desk. There was a raccoon plugging a connector back in so the thing doesn't go missing. Because let's face it, if I don't put that connector back in the Extron, it will go walkies. And the next thing, I will want to use it. I can't see why, but because it's on the audio side. But I then won't be able to use it because I won't know where it's gone. Are they not in a box in the cupboard, Majenko? But yes, as you can see here, you can see the big black gaping open output of the chiller unit. I'm not joking when I said this thing is a little bit overkill. The dehumidifier simply ejects into the spare room's guttering, and when I shut its system down, that will be wet. It will have just been literally pouring water down the side of the house. So it shouldn't be. When I did the tidying of my actual room, I put a load of stuff in boxes, and my stream watching PC by the bed is built out of an i7 NUC. It's a 7000 series, 2-core Piper threading i7. I have a second identical one. I don't know which box I've put it in. And because it's a NUC, it's not exactly the biggest PC. And it's not in my box of mini PCs, so it's got to be one of the others. So somewhere there is a spare i7 with its power supply, and I'm not too sure where I've put it. So I was going to use that for testing for a customer yesterday, and I ended up using an i3 6000 series, which has to be the slowest server 2025 system I've ever built. In fact, it's probably one of the slowest servers I've built for quite a while, because it's a 3.4 gig 2-core hyper threading, and I'm running 2025 on it. As I said to you yesterday when you said does it have progress bars, unfortunately, it's a modern Windows Server install. They don't bother with progress bars anymore. They much rather tell you a percentage. So now the things to be sent to you, Majenko, is more the when I get into the loft and have a look, see what state they're in. So, but right, I will put this to the side and let Simon know that we can take it out and get his customer fully working, which will be nice because the social club is also air conditioned, so if it's a hot day we can still stay cold. Plus they've got the advantage that being a social club, they've got drinks on tap, so if you get thirsty you can always ask for a pint or something. And that's going to be it for today, so thank you for joining me while we found out if this worked, and we will see how things go.